everybody, and welcome to tonight's lecture. And Bezat Hashem, God willing, we will be able to together learn something that is very relevant to today's time specifically, and in our generation. So I want to welcome all those that are joining us virtually on Zoom, and those that are here in person joining us. And tonight we want to discuss and learn all about cremation. Why do we want to learn about cremation? Because it's a question that is on many people's mind, and not only that, but more and more the mainstream cemeteries and mortuaries and so on and so forth are actually offering such service. So as usual, whenever there is something new that comes to the market, the question always is it kosher? And that's a question that I get quite often when it comes to cremation. So what we want to discuss tonight, God willing, and to get a sense of clarity from a Jewish perspective is, in general, is cremation Jewish or kosher? And furthermore, someone may say, well, what if my father or mother's wish was to be cremated? Should we not respect that wish? Are we not obligated to respect and follow what our parents tell us? Or some people may say, well, me and my siblings are responsible for a burial, and therefore we have collectively decided this, so it's our will, so that should be respected. And others will say, well, what is the whole idea of burial? Who is it for? The deceased anyhow doesn't feel much. The soul has left, so there is the body. So therefore burial is for those that have been now left to deal with the body. So we're okay with it. So isn't that enough to be okay with it? Furthermore, some people have questions and they ask about the whole process. They feel that cremation is more eco-friendly, that it's good for the environment to cremate. So that would be another reason why to do cremation. And furthermore, some people say, isn't it cheaper? It's cheaper to cremate, so why not? Things are tough these days, the economy and the way money is hard to come by, so therefore we could save some money, why not? And does it have, this is one of the questions that we want to address tonight, is how a body is disposed of, if it's buried versus if it's cremated. Does it have any ramifications for the soul of the deceased? And does it have any ramifications now for this phase for the soul of the deceased? Does it have any ramification for the soul of the deceased anytime in the future? And also, what ramifications does it have for those that are left, for the children? Does it make a difference to us? So all of these are questions that, God willing, we hope to be able to tackle tonight and to get a good grip and understanding of this topic. So first of all, let's understand the relationship of and the existence of the body of a Jewish person. So we know, as it has been taught in Hasidus, in mysticism, in Kabbalah, and not only that, in the Torah itself, in the 5 books of Moses, where we have a soul. And this soul is what gives us the power to live, to be able to grow, and God willing, for 120 years. This is the life force that we have. So first of all, what is the essence of the soul? And then how does it fuse with the body? As we have to understand, and it's explained in depth in Kabbalah and mysticism, that the soul of a person is literally a part of God. that has been put in that person. Where do you see that? In the Torah. So you see in the Torah that when it comes to the time of creation of man, of humanity, it says that God created a person in a two-step process, which is very fascinating because everything else that was created in a one-step process. For example, the birds, the fish, the animals, the trees, everything was, okay, let there be, and boom, there it was. And so when the bird was created, for example, a chicken, it was a physical body of a chicken with a life force. It just came into existence. Same thing with the fish. God said, let there be the fish in the oceans, and suddenly there was physical fish, billions and jillions of different kinds, with a life force. Same thing with the animals. So everything was a one-step process of creation. But when it came to creation of man, then suddenly there was a change in this process. As it's explained in the Torah, that God created the body of man from earth. And then it says a fascinating expression in the Torah. It says, and then God blew into him a living soul. God blew into him a living soul. So first of all, here we see a couple of things. That the body of a person was a separate creation. Where did it come from? Came from earth, came from dust. Once that was formed, God put into it a living soul. But what does it say about that living soul? It doesn't just say God put into him a living soul. The expression is God breathed into him, blew into him a living soul. What does that mean? God doesn't have a body. God is not physical. He doesn't have a nose to breathe in, and he doesn't have a mouth to breathe out, right? So what does it mean that God blew into him a living soul? So our sages explain to us in Kabbalah and Hasidus that it's a euphemism. In other words, the Torah, God is trying to make us understand a certain phenomena, but Torah has to speak in a language that we understand, that we could relate to. Even though God is not a person, is not a body, and doesn't have any physical aspects of our body, but in order to make us understand a very important point about the soul, God uses that expression, that he blew into him a living soul. Now, what is so unique about blowing? What happens if you blow? For those that have tried it before, whether you blow or even if you do non-stop talking, especially if you talk loud, what happens? At a certain point, if you do non-stop and you just keep on going and going, you start getting dizzy. Or if you constantly blow, you're going to pass out. Why? Because that breath that is coming out in us, in human beings, is the very life force that is keeping us alive. Without it, we cannot live. So when your breath is coming out, that's your life force. So the same expression was used in the Torah for when God is giving the soul to Adam, to human being, to let you know that this living soul, this living power that is being invested in Adam, in humanity, is from the very essence of God. Just like when you blow, it's from your essence. So therefore, the Torah uses that kind of expression. And therefore, now we understand something important. That together with this body that God created, which was a physical creation, God added a second element, which was the soul, which is part of God himself. From that moment on, when Adam was created in this manner, And for the same for the same manner, in the same manner, all humanity, once a person is coming to life, besides the physical body, there is a living soul, a godly soul that is invested in the person. Now, for the next 120 years, a person is utilizing this soul to be able to live. And the body of a person becomes a house, a vessel, a utensil that holds on, a partner. It's almost like a marriage. A partner for this soul. As a matter of fact, in the writings of mysticism, many times when Kabbalah wants to refer to a body and soul, it refers to it as a husband and a wife, because they're inseparable. It's two partners that make up being one entity, a marriage. The same thing is the soul, and the same thing is the body. So now, for 120 years, this body has become a vessel, a path, a way for the soul to express itself, to fulfill its destiny, to be able to fulfill any of the mitzvot. In other words, let's say you want to be able to go and give charity. How do you give charity? A soul without a body cannot give charity. You need the hand, you need the feet, you need the head, you need to work to be able to make the money so that you could give charity. And the same thing for any other mitzvah. You want to light Shabbat candles. Without your body, it's impossible for you to light Shabbat candles. So any aspect of life that you could imagine, which we have the mitzvah for, one of the commandments that God has given us, it needs the body in order to be able to fulfill that. So what happens after a while, even if it's a short time, but surely when you're talking about a lifetime, so the body has now been a helper to the soul. So the body also has connected itself to godliness through the soul. The soul was the main driving power, but hey, even if you're a good driver, without a set of wheels, you can't go anywhere. So the soul needed the body in order to be able to accomplish what it needed. So now comes after 120 years, hopefully for everybody, and it's time for the soul to go to the world of truth, as we say. And so what happens at that point? So what happens at that point is that the soul and the body have been together for a long time. It's very difficult. God forbid, if anyone has ever gone through the pain and agony of a spouse passing away, right? And it's almost like, especially if they were married for a long time, it's extremely painful. And it's almost like life cannot continue because the spouse is gone. Why? How could it be? Weren't you two, the husband and wife, born single before you got married? So surely there was life before that, before you got married. Yeah, but after they got married, that's it. They're inseparable. They were part and parcel of each other's life and contributed to everything that was accomplished in life. Same thing is with the body and soul. That their attachment gets so deep that when it comes time for the soul to depart from the body, it's extremely difficult for the two of them. The body suddenly feels the lack of the soul, and the soul suddenly says, hey, where's my partner? Where's my spouse? And that is one of the reasons why the process of the soul separating from the body is not an immediate process. In other words, the soul leaving the body and going to its rightful place works in stages, and it takes some time. And for example, as it's explained, and in short, I just mentioned it without going into details, that the first 3 days are the most difficult, and then the first 7 days, then the first 30 days, and then the first year. Those are very important milestones in the soul being able to gradually separate itself from the body. And until the body is buried, the separation doesn't even start, which is one of the reasons why in Judaism we're commanded to bury the deceased right away. We don't wait. Sometimes the same day. It's not going to be a fancy funeral. It's not going to have a lot of people around. Judaism says, so what? If most of the important people, such as the kids, are able to make it, then you go ahead. Oh, what about the colleagues, and what about the business partners, and what about the friends? Doesn't matter. Same day. Why? Because the separation of the body from the soul is a process that can't even start. The soul is in limbo until the burial starts. And even then, what's fascinating, Kabbalah teaches us that the separation is not in totality, but rather as more and more time passes by and many levels of the soul are able to ascend and go on high, there is a level of the soul, which is called the nephesh part of the soul, that retains its connection to the body. That's the part of the soul that was in charge of passing through all the spiritual powers to the body and make it function. So even though it can't necessarily make it function anymore, but part of it remains always attached to the body at the place of the burial, wherever it's buried. Yeah, that is one of the reasons, by the way, why in Judaism there is an ancient custom of going to the graveside of people to visit them, or we go to the graveside of holy people and we pray to God there. Well, what's the story? Why are we going there? They're no longer physically here, but the reason why we go there is because the body and where they are buried actually works as like a portal to their soul. And so therefore, we ask God that in the merit of that righteous person, and we ask the soul of that righteous person in the heavens above to intercede on our behalf. That's the reason for the custom that we go to the graveside of people. So that, in short, is an introduction to the soul, the body, their fusion together, and how they become partners, and then the process of the soul separating from the body to some extent, not fully, after the passing. So now comes, unfortunately, the stage of somebody has passed away, or somebody that knows is going to pass away, or somebody that is perfectly feeling good but is planning to plan for the future. What's going to be? Is it going to be burial? Is it going to be cremation? So what's wrong with cremation? Is there anything wrong? And who said that it has to be burial in earth? So let's start with the basics. That first of all, in the Torah itself, there is a clear commandment that we have been given, being that it explains over there clearly that God created the body from earth, and then God, in the book of Genesis itself, says that when it comes time to passing, from earth you have come, and to earth thou shalt return. So being buried in earth is actually one of the commandments of the Torah. So that's first of all, as far as a clear commandment. And not everybody knows that, because not everybody has studied it, not everybody may be aware of all the commandments. But we have that commandment. So now we know. Now, but at the same time, somebody may say, Rabbi, but we got to live with the times. And if there is something good that comes, then we should think about it. I mean, In the times of the Torah, there was no talk about cars, right? They didn't have cars. So should we not ride cars these days? Now there is cars. Now there is airplanes. So maybe cremation is a good thing. So the answer to that is that sure, whenever there is new technology, new ideas, we have to think about them, and if they are kosher, so to say, and I'll explain that, then we could embrace it. What does it mean if they are kosher? If this new idea, this new phenomena seems to be according to the laws of the Torah, then that's perfectly fine. Then we could take on that new idea and phenomena. But if it's not, if it goes against the tenets and the foundations of the Torah, then we're not allowed to. So in the Torah talks about body having to be buried. And not only that, the Torah also gives us the commandment that on the same day, as soon as possible, somebody passes away, they should be buried. So we have to heed all of this. So now, what about the fact, Rabbi, that cremation is something that my father or my mother specifically asked for? Before they passed away, they said, listen, honey, I love you, you love me, so I want to tell you that I want cremation. And they didn't give any reasons. Or maybe they gave reasons. Maybe mom or dad said, I don't want to be a burden on you, to spend so much money. I don't want to be a burden on you and your siblings to have to come to visit me at the gravesite. Or they're gonna say that it's I had a tough life, so I don't want the physicality anymore. I want to be done with this. Or they may say that as I grew up I used to be a hippie, and every day I went and I hugged trees. So how can I now come and harm the environment? It's no good. So I want to be gone with cremation. So what do you do with all of this? So first of all, let's tackle the respect for parents topic. The fact that they wished for it. The Torah makes it very clear that while respecting your parents is an important mitzvah, one of the big mitzvahs that we have in the Torah, but nonetheless, it is a mitzvah to follow that and respect the parents and their wishes, as long as their wishes match with the Torah and what the Torah teaches us. In other words, if a parent would stretch out their arm to the child and say, do me a favor, cut this finger off, would we do it? If a parent comes and says, do me a favor, take me to the rooftop and throw me down, would we do it? Of course, the questions are silly because nobody would do it. But the point is that just because a parent made a special request based on a certain knowledge or lack of knowledge, that doesn't mean that I, from a Torah perspective, am obligated to follow that. That's not called respecting a parent. When you know better, or you have come to find out better, what needs to be done. So don't let your conscience be bothered with the fact that, well, but that's what my father asked for. And a lot of people, God forbid, after their parent has passed away and it's before burial, they are in such an agony and pain that they become very super focused on just that one thing. They feel this is the ultimate respect and the last will and testament of my parents that I could fulfill. They said they want to be cremated, so I have to, Rabbi. I cannot. I have to listen to them. A person cannot be responsible for a decision that was made without knowing the proper knowledge and proper education. So you can't hold it against them. As a matter of fact, in the Torah it writes that the obligation of burial is the responsibility of those that are alive. They automatically become responsible and they have to carry it out in the proper way. But one second, isn't cremation better for the environment? Rabbi, isn't there a mitzvah in the Torah that says we have to care about the world and about the environment, and we have to be careful with everything? We have to be careful with our body, right? It's one of the commandments in the Torah. The answer is absolutely. Yes, we do have a responsibility to the physical surroundings and to the physical world. But first of all, as we said, we have a clear commandment how a person's body should be disposed of after death. But besides that, for those that have this myth about cremation being environmentally friendly, unfortunately, it's readily available for you if you were to Google about the process of cremation. It's a bit gory, but nonetheless, we have to answer the halachic question here. And that is that a body is taken and is put into an oven. And if the person is an average height and weight, then the oven has to burn at very high heat for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, so that everything burns and sizzles and so on and so forth. And if someone is heavier or bigger or taller or whatever, then that process takes even longer, during which there has to be either coals burning or electricity or whatever way it is that this is going to happen, that will release more toxins into the environment. And this is scientific. This is not something that I'm making up. There's studies, and it's available if you Google this, that what kind of toxins are released into the environment and how much damage is to the ozone layer and so on and so forth with each cremation. But that's not the end of it. Because at the end of the process of burning the body, the bones are still left. The bones don't burn. So now they have to do something with the body, with the bones. So that's when they take the bones and either they put them into a machine that has to start grinding it, which takes a long time till it becomes finer, or as they do in some cremation houses, where they come with metal huge hammers and they start pounding it to first break it into smaller pieces so that it fits into the grinding machine. And then they go through the process until they turn it into a powder. So first of all, environmentally, we understand now that it's not good for the environment. That actually a more greener burial is precisely the type of burial that the Torah prescribes. As a matter of fact, there's some non-religious movement now which talk about green burial, where they are against any metal caskets and a lot of other things that is used in regular funeral homes, and that it should be only in dirt and so on and so forth. And okay, wonderful. But guess what? You know who has had that process for thousands of years? The Torah, Judaism. And not only that, but then there is the issue of respect for the body. As we discussed before, the body was a partner to the soul. And so whatever respect it is that we feel for the soul, and therefore we want to honor it, well, guess what? The other half of the soul is the body. So we have to give just as much respect to the body, and therefore bury it with dignity. Then there is another issue that is troubling. If you remember earlier, we spoke about the connection of the soul to the body, and how even after the passing, there is a level of the soul that remains there with the body forever, where it's buried. Not that the soul is trapped in the body. No, the soul is in the heavens above. But because that part of the soul is still anchored down with the body, it retains a channel and the soul is there. Not only that, we spoke about the fact that separation of the soul from the body is very painful. That's why it takes over time and in stages to make this painful transition for the soul easier. Even though the soul came from the heavens above, from God himself, but after so many years of living with the body, it's difficult. So the transition is made easy by making it in stages. But now, when somebody is cremated, so what happens? So that means we are by force cutting off and hastening this separation of the soul from the body, because the body is about to be destroyed. So whatever transition that is supposed to take over some time for this adjustment of the soul to the new setting, the soul now goes through a tremendous suffering because of what it's forced to. It's pushed, and it's by force separated from the body. And being that forever there's part of the soul that remains with the body, even after the body has decomposed and it's buried in the ground, that means at any given time, when the body is cremated, it's as though we're taking a body that has a soul and we're burning it. Albeit, it's not the full power of the soul, it's not all the different levels of the soul, but there's still some part of the soul that is there. So it's causing pain for the body and for the soul. Not much different than taking a live person, God forbid, and burning them. Then there is another aspect, and that is the relationship of the loved ones, of the children and grandchildren with the parents or grandparents. As long as there is a body and it's buried somewhere, which establishes and anchors down a level of the soul to be there as a portal to connect, that means there is a place for the children to be able to go there, to say Kaddish at the gravesite, to be able to pray, to be able to be closer to the loved one, to the parents that have passed away, and connect. And by cremation, all of that is eliminated. No more body, pain and suffering to the soul. The portal of the soul has been shut down. And the Kaddish, which is said, and the prayers and all the customs that we are used to for the benefit and for the sake of the soul can no longer be there. For example, if somebody unknowingly, because he or she didn't have education, decided he or she wants to be cremated and was, right? And okay, so they didn't know any better. But if somebody understands and still wants cremation, the Jewish law actually comes and says no sitting Shiva for such a person. You can't sit Shiva for 7 days for this soul, for this person. Now, sitting Shiva is something super important. Sitting Shiva is not only for the sake of the loved ones that are left in this world, which helps them during that period of time to be able to make the transition, but the Shiva period is also a period of transition for the soul. It says that the soul during those 7 days keeps on going from the gravesite to the house and back to the gravesite and back to the house, between the two realms that it's now in. It's going back and forth. So now imagine, if there is no burial, now there is no gravesite, and there is no Shiva. So the ones that are alive are now going to have that deficiency and lack that connection, and they can't help the loved one either. Now, in their mind, they think, I'm doing it for the sake of the loved one, out of respect, and but in fact, it's not. It's the opposite. And what if somebody says, hey, Rabbi, I live in a different city, in a different town. I'm not going to be going to visit them anyhow. It's not like, and my children for sure not. They could care less. So nobody's going to go visit them. Okay? But we just discussed and we just understood the importance of a body that still has part of the soul forever attached to it to have a resting place. And it's a commandment from the Torah. So even if it's not within your plans ever, but don't say ever, never, but even if it's not in your plans to go and visit the gravesite, doesn't matter. The proper respect for somebody that has passed away is for them to have a proper burial. As a matter of fact, there is laws in the Torah that highlight this very much. For example, the high priest, the Kohen Gadol in the times of the temple, going back 2,000 years ago, imagine in Jerusalem, we have the temple, we have all the Kohens, the priests, and we have the high priest, which needs to keep himself pure at all times. No matter what happens, he has to be able to go inside the temple in absolute purity, spiritual purity, to be able to do the service of God. But what happens if this high priest is going from his home, let's say, to travel to go to the temple, and on the way, by the side of the road, sees and finds a dead body, but there's nobody else to bury this person? So the Torah says that the high priest has to defile himself. It's fine. He has to go ahead and take care of this burial. Why? Even though that means he's going to become impure, not for days he's going to become impure, and he won't be able to lead the services in the temple, in the holy temple in Jerusalem. But the Torah says there is nothing higher than this. A body has to be buried, even though he is not related to this person. So it has nothing to do with whether we could visit, we can't visit. There is advantages to that. But the burial has to be done properly in order for the body to be able to experience also the proper connection to the soul, and for the soul to have the proper transition to where it needs to go, to the heavens above. So we have spoken about the importance of the soul and the body. And by the way, in the as far as the importance of the body being buried, in the Jerusalem Talmud is where the source for it that explains in details extensively the importance of the entire body to be buried, not to have only, why can't we just burn the body and then bury the bones? Right? Or there's now newer technology. Instead of burning and pulverizing everything, they have like liquid cremation, where they will put the body in something that is just going to disintegrate and nothing be left. And again, doesn't matter what method will be suggested, we have spoken about the importance of burial. From the dirt, from dust you have come, and to dust you shall be returned, is the commandment in the Torah, and we have to fulfill that. These days, unfortunately, we are watching a lot of disturbing images from our Holy Land. And many of you have seen that in the sites, and maybe you have even watched the interviews, from the sites where these holy people that were murdered, and may God avenge their blood and put their soul in the proper resting place, and may God bring victory to the Jewish people over their enemies. But in the videos that you watch, where they're going to these places where these tragedies are happened, there is a lot of people, and they're wearing special vests and special clothing. A lot of them are like white overalls. And in Hebrew, in the back of them, it says Zaka, the Zaka group. Who are the Zaka group? These are volunteers whose sole job is retrieval of bodies. And not only they retrieve the body, but if God forbid there was an explosion and the body was blown up as part of the explosion, they will spend as much time as necessary in any house, in any yard, and in any field, anywhere, to find every single part of the body that is no longer attached, so that it could be buried together with the rest of the body. Why is that? Well, after tonight's class, we have a good solid understanding of why. Because the body has become holy. The body has been a partner to the soul and has enabled the soul to be able to fulfill its purpose. So therefore, the body is no less than the soul itself. And that's why there is so many laws in details about how to handle a body of a deceased, how to be respectful to it, how to move it, and when it comes time to the purification, to wash the body before burial, how it should be done, what you could look at, what you can't look at, it's mind-boggling. I understand not everybody has the guts for that kind of, to go do purification on the body. So there are very special people that do that as a mitzvah to prepare the body for burial. But even that has laws. As a matter of fact, this group of people who are called Chevre Kadisha, right, the holy society that takes care of these things, at least once a year, for themselves, they have a fast day. They fast once a year, not Yom Kippur. In addition to Yom Kippur, they fast. Why? One of the reasons is just in case they were not 100% careful, and maybe they were not 100% respectful to the bodies that they were handling. Imagine, these righteous people, they fast one day and they pray on that day special just for forgiveness if they didn't accord all the respect that is deserved to a body that is deceased. Why? Exactly because of what we learned today. Because of the holiness that is imbued in the body because of the soul. And it doesn't make a difference if this body was alive 120 years or if this body was alive mere seconds or minutes. As soon as the soul is invested in the body, that body becomes holy. So I think we have now covered a lot of key points here tonight. We covered whether cremation is kosher or not according to Judaism. So we have learned that no, it's not kosher. This is not the way that the Torah wants. And I want to make this very clear. God forbid, the goal of tonight's class is not to put guilt and make anyone feel bad that may have already had relatives or parents or grandparents cremated. This is not all about making somebody feel horrible and so on and so forth. That's after the fact. First of all, if somebody didn't know, wasn't educated about this, whether the deceased himself and herself, or the loved ones, which were not educated about this enough, and went ahead with cremation, that's different. That's very different. Just like the 6 million Jews that got wiped out in the Holocaust. They were all burnt. So what happens with them? So the answer is, they didn't do it with their own hand, with their own decision, or out of their own knowledge. It wasn't in their control. So first of all, if it's not in somebody's control, that's completely different. That's a different spiritual status. And they are holy people. And they will have a portion in the world to come. But even if it was their decision, but it was out of ignorance, they didn't know what Judaism has to say about this, okay, so unfortunately, again, they were not in control because they weren't educated. And I want to tell you another fascinating point, because we asked about, does it make a difference to the soul now? So we understand now that it does make a difference to the soul when the body is being buried. Now, what about in the future? What about in the distant future? And I'm not talking about just when children and grandchildren want to go to the gravesite of the parents or grandparents and pray there, which that by itself, of course, has a lot of significance and importance, that they could go and they could connect. And there's a portal there for the soul to be able, for their soul to speak to the soul of the loved ones, and so on and so forth. But I want to fast forward to the times of Mashiach. As you know, in Judaism, we learn that the entire purpose of creation of the world is for the world to come to its climax of a world that is full of godliness, that only good, there will be no more war, no more hatred, no more famine and sickness, and so on and so forth. And all of that is going to happen when Mashiach comes. Translated Mashiach, which Mashiach means the anointed one, and in English is translated Messiah, when Messiah is going to come, Mashiach. And Maimonides writes who it's going to be. It's going to be from the tribe of King David, from the tribe of Judah, and so on and so forth. But we're not going into the identity of this person. And when it's going to come, that's a fascinating course by itself. But when Mashiach comes, there will be a gathering of all Jewish people from all four corners of the world to come to the Holy Land, to Jerusalem. And also it says that he is going to be the catalyst to unite the world, not just the Jewish people, to unite the world. And he will build the third temple, the Holy Temple, which will be bigger in size, in holiness, and so on and so forth than the first two. And one of the big highlights of the coming of Mashiach is that everyone that has passed away will be resurrected again in their physical body. All our loved ones, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, Moses, Maimonides, and so on and so forth. Anyone that you could imagine of the special people in your life, in history, everyone will be back and resurrected. God is going to put the soul back in their body. However, what happens if there is no body? Right? Because it says that even if the body itself will decompose, buried, but the bones will last for a long time. And in particular, there is a particular bone called luz, which is in the back of the head, which will last forever. It doesn't get destroyed in the normal process. And the Talmud talks about it, and the Book of Prophets, about how God is going to resurrect, put the souls, and recreate the body, every person's body, back with the soul, and they will join the rest of the Jewish people. So it comes out, God forbid, if somebody is intentionally, knowing so, and nonetheless decides to be cremated, now that possibility has been taken away, where the soul cannot be reunited with that body when Mashiach comes. Of course, again, it's a topic for a different lecture. What about reincarnation? What if that soul came in different bodies, different periods of time? So yes, they can reunite with a different body from a different period of time, but that part of the body which was active in that particular period of time with that particular body is not going to be able to be resurrected. So we see that burial is necessary for the body, proper burial. It's a mitzvah from the Torah. It benefits the soul. It eases the transition of the soul in separating from the body. And not only that, it gives it a footprint, so to say, in this world to always be connected to where the body is buried. And also in the future, when Mashiach comes, that body will be reunited with the soul. So it's for all of these reasons that the Torah forbids us from cremation, whether it's with fire or it's with liquid or any other method. And the Torah expressly and clearly prescribes burial as being the entire body in the ground is the way that it should be done. So as everyone thinks about preparations for that day, which God willing Mashiach will come before then, but if Mashiach doesn't come, we for sure know there's taxes, and also there is the passing away. So we need to prepare, and a lot of people are putting it in their will and in their last will and testament, and whatever it is, their wishes, how they want it to be. And as a matter of fact, I would say that it's important because you never know how the loved ones are going to make the decision. So it's important that you clearly write it in your will that you want a kosher, orthodox burial with all the traditions that are involved. After all, that's the last respect that could be given to a body and a soul, to both of them. And even if we spoke about cremation might be cheaper, right? So, do we always try to save money and nickel and dime on everything that we do? If you want to send your children to a school, do you send them only to the cheapest school around? No, so fine. You give yourself a little bit of a hard time financially and you make it happen because that's good for them in the long term. Or if you're buying a car, how many people buy a car and say, okay, let me have this option in there and that option in there and so on and so forth. 1 second, why aren't you skimping there? What do you mean? Long term, it's a good investment. Okay, the same thing. You're talking about until Mashiach comes, this burial, the way this body is going to be disposed of is forever until Mashiach comes. If it costs a little bit more, that's okay. Having said all of that, there may be families or individuals that financially are not that well to do. So in all communities, including Los Angeles, there is organizations and funds that will help with that. That if somebody, God forbid, doesn't have the financial wherewithal to do a proper burial, then those expenses could be taken care of, a plot for burial could be provided, and so on and so forth. God forbid, nobody should think about being cremated, or nobody should think about cremating a loved one because of financial reasons. Please be in touch with your local rabbi and local Orthodox or Chabad rabbi, Chabad house, who are very conscious about these things, and they will make sure that nobody is left out because of financial reasons. And these things could be taken care of, absolutely. So I think we have covered, in brief, all the main points, and I'm wondering if anyone has any questions. You could turn on your microphone and ask the questions, or you could type the text. And here as well, if there's any questions in the audience, tell me.
One of the concern about environmentally is that the body in the soul is going to be decomposed and it is going to pollute the waters. That's why one of the reasons, of course, that's what they're saying.
Right. So for those that couldn't hear the question well, the question was asked that one of the concerns is that as the body decomposes, that it might contaminate the water and so on and so forth. So the process of I'm sorry to get morbid here, but if you're squeamish, then plug your ears. But the process of the body being decomposed, of course, is not a pleasant one, right? But at the same time, our amazing earth has the capability to really absorb and be able to block everything that it needs to. In other words, the drinking water that you're referring to, right? obviously all the drinking water comes from underneath the earth, most of it, and there is so much of so much of chemicals and waste and so on and so forth that is underneath there. But nonetheless, not only that, these days they even have sanitation departments where they take the already used water, right, the waste, and they've turned it back into drinking water, right? What are they doing? All they do on a small scale, they mimic what the nature does. In other words, there is hundreds of thousands of miles of earth and minerals and stones and that does this filtration naturally. So all human beings do in their filtration and processing plants, they create a mini one which is completely able to clean all the water. So, but these are concerns that some people, again, without getting real answers to it, they run with it. Or, for example, some people are worried about real estate. They go, hey, if we keep on burying people, what's going to be? Land is valuable. So, while, yes, I understand that we live in LA area, right, where a tiny piece of land could be very, very expensive. But the fact is that, God forbid, if the entire population of the United States, 10 times over, had to be buried at the same time, 10 times the population of the United States, we would not use even 1% of the land that is in the United States. Not even 1%. So it's, again, that's not I understand it's a concern, but when you think about it and study it more, you realize that no, it's not a real concern. Right. And again, we have to, above all, questions are good, no problem. All these questions are good. But above all, we have to know that God has given us a manual for life and death by giving us the Torah. So we follow it. And even if sometimes we do understand, we don't understand, this is what God has said, right? For example, God said to keep kosher. Keep kosher. Don't eat meat and milk together. So sure, over time there has been studies that go, oh yes, eating milk and meat together is not healthy for your body and so on and so forth. And okay, that's beautiful that science is trying to catch up. But do we as Jewish people keep kosher and not eat milk and meat together because of the scientific fact behind it? No, because God said so. As a matter of fact, in a year from now, they may find another scientific research which says the other way around. Right. That no, it's good to have them together. Right. I mean, take that for example with coffee, right? Coffee is good for you. The next study says it's bad for you. Again, the next study says it's very good for you. Which side do you put the baby to sleep in the crib? So one study, they say for 1 decade, it's put him on the side. The next decade, the scientists come back and say, no, it's got to be on their back. The next decade say, no, choking hazard, it's got to be on their stomach. And they keep on changing their mind. So ultimately, everything that we do in Judaism, yes, there is a mitzvah to understand why. That's a mitzvah, to understand Torah. But ultimately, beyond that understanding, we do it because God said so.
I have one more question.
Sure.
They bulldozed the Jewish cemetery in Tehran.
Right.
Which my father was in it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is about that? How, that now everything is going to be destroyed, basically.
Right. So it happens, unfortunately, also in Europe many times, many locations in Europe where cemeteries are destroyed, they build on top of them, and so on and so forth. And so while there may not be an accessible location to go to the gravesite anymore, but nonetheless, the bodies were buried in that location. So that location remains to be the burial site. And so as far as burial is concerned, everything was done kosher. You know, it's unfortunate that they get desecrated like that. I didn't know that about the cemetery there in Iran. Is that something recent or?
No, that was about 25 years ago.
Yeah. So, okay. Good. Any other questions from audience online or in here? Okay, so what I want to also tell you, as you may have more questions and you might type them or not, I don't know. Let me see, is there a texting feature here? I don't know. I don't see any chats here. Okay, I was just wondering if... All right. No. So I don't see any questions right here. Just for everybody's benefit, if you did type any questions, just want to tell you that I'm not able to see anything typed. I don't know if it's just because nobody asked or I'm not seeing it. So do me a favor, turn on your microphone and ask your question if you have any. So your question, what was your question that we're...
I just asked about the bulldozing the...
Yeah. So what I want to say also is, because we started talking about Kabbalah and mysticism as part of our talk, which is, you know, one of those things that most of the depth of understanding about souls we get from Kabbalah and mysticism, even though it's all rooted in the Torah itself. So to that end, God willing, starting next week, Wednesday evening, 7 p.m., here in person in the Chabad house, we're going to be having a 6-week series for 6 weeks, Wednesday nights, 7 p.m., of the world of Kabbalah, the world of mysticism, where we're going to take you through a journey, and our goal is to give you a crash course, to tell you the fundamentals, to teach you the lingo, and to teach you the purpose of Kabbalah and how it could be utilized in our life. And I think it's going to be a very fascinating series for everybody. So I invite you to go online. It's on our website where there's a link to sign up for the session. You will get a book with all the relevant text and all the sources and everything, so that you could become a professor on your own to learn and teach about Kabbalah and mysticism. And while, of course, in 6 weeks, we're not going to learn everything in Kabbalah and mysticism, but our goal is that in these 6 weeks, we would lay the foundation of how to learn and how to go further and expand your knowledge in this realm. And from there, I assure you, your life will be changed forever. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And God willing, we should have only good news. We should never have to deal with matters of this sort. We should always have pleasant news to share with each other. And the ultimate good news will be the coming of Mashiach, so that all world problems are solved, and we're going to have peace and tranquility, not just for the Jewish people, for the entire world, God willing. Wishing you all a wonderful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.